Chassidus on the festival of Chanukah, and I think you have that on Kindle there, right? Beautiful. So I'm on page 30 right now. Okay, so we're going to go deep into the discourse today. Just a quick review on what we learned yesterday. Tan Rabbanan Ner Chanukah is a Gemara. It's a Gemara in Shabbos, which is the only place in the Talmud that talks about the festival of Chanukah. It says over there, we spoke about the debate in the Talmud between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Good morning, David and Fran. A debate in the Talmud about whether we start off with eight lights going down to 7, 6, all the way down to 1, or if we start off with 1 light and we go all the way up to 8. That's a debate in the Talmud. And the Talmud compared the lights of Chanukah to the oxen, the bulls, that were offered on Sukkot in the temple. I want to do this summary very briefly because I really want to get into the guts of what we're learning today. So there's a comparison between the way they offer the bulls, which was in a decreasing order on Sukkot, to the way we do the Chanukah lights. So the questions we asked were 4 questions yesterday. Good morning. 4 questions. Number 1 is, what's the connection between Sukkot and Chanukah? What? Here you got numbers, and here you got numbers, so we throw them together. There's got to be a deeper connection between Sukkot and Chanukah. The second question we asked is, if we're lighting Chanukah lights because of the temple menorah, then why do we light 8 Chanukah lights when the temple menorah was 7 on the candelabra? A third question was, the Chanukah festival relates to the candelabra in the temple, and the bulls of Sukkot relate to the altar. That's what they were offered upon the altar. And the altar and the candelabra were 2 very, very different services in the Holy Temple. In fact, when compared one to another, we spoke about this yesterday, the altar is lower in holiness than the menorah. So how do we compare the 2? And our fourth and final question was, if we're lighting the Chanukah lights based on the menorah in the temple, then why is there such a difference that the menorah lights were lit in the daytime in the temple, and the Chanukah lights are lit at night? The menorah lights are lit inside the holy in the temple, and the Chanukah lights are lit outside. Right? Why the discrepancy? So what we're going to do today, and if you have the book, we're on page 30. Good morning, Lauren. Terry, welcome back. Terry lost her dad a few weeks ago in Atlanta. May his soul be elevated in Gan Eden. Good to have you back with us, Terry. And Corey, good morning. If you have the book, here it is, just to tell which one it is. It's Victory of Light, published by Kehot. You can download it right now. I think it's $5.99 on Kindle. I think it's Amazon. You can get it on Amazon. Somebody has it here. It's a beautiful discourse by the Rabbi. So what we're going to explain is like this. Let me tell you where we're going. What the Rabbi is going to explain to us is that Chanukah is an extraordinary Jewish holiday. By understanding what the Greeks were trying to achieve, and how close they came to achieving that goal of assimilating the Jewish people into their culture, we'll understand how the Jews had no choice but to bring out the big guns, weapons of mass construction.
Nice, very good.
They had no choice, WMCs. They had no choice. They had to bring out the heavy guns, nuclear energy. What's nuclear energy? Nuclear energy is very, very, very small. It's microscopic, but its impact is extremely powerful. Just a quick story I want to share with you. My neighbor in South Africa, Rabbi David Lappin, not a Chabadnik, he's an Orthodox rabbi. When he came to South Africa, he was afraid to lose his independence as he went into the rabbinate. So he kept a business on the side, his consulting business. But both of them grew, the rabbinate and the consulting business, and he became very successful in both, and he had no time to manage both. He figured one of them was going to have to go. So he came to America for some reason, and while he was in America, he decided he's going to consult with the Rebbe. He's going to visit the Rabbi Schneerson, the Lubavitcher Rebbe. He's going to ask him for advice. He sits down with his wife, Serena, in the private audience, and he tells the Rebbe his problem, and the Rebbe says, I think you should do both. So Rabbi Lappin says, Rabbi, I appreciate your confidence in me, but I got to tell you, I can't do anymore. So the Rebbe said, here's what you don't understand. You think that a human being is like a chemical reaction, where one chemical interacts with another chemical to produce a third compound. A linear reaction, but it's not. That's not how a human being works. A human being is a nuclear reaction, where the impact is not linear, but spherical. It blew his mind.
I know what it feels
Like
like.
me. Yeah.
It's a spherical impact. What that means, so David Lappin interpreted this to mean in terms of he understood it in terms of the Framingham heart study. The famous Framingham heart study, good morning, Ed, is that if we are having a positive conversation right now, if we all had a positive experience in shul this morning, then not only our spouses will be positively impacted by that, not only will the friends of our spouses be impacted by that, but the friends of our spouses will be uplifted from this meeting. It's through 3 degrees of separation. That's the Framingham heart study. So if all 10 of us in shul, we were 18 people in shul this morning, I think, right? If all 18 of us had a positive and uplifting experience, that means not only 18 more people will be affected, but 18 to the power of 4. Right? It's a spherical impact. So he said, what Rabbi was saying to Rabbi Lappin is, you want to make a difference. You think that you think that you've got too much on your plate. You're thinking small. Don't think linear. Don't think one-dimensional. Think 3-dimensional. Your impact is so much more than what you think you can achieve. Right? You can change the world. You can change South Africa by passionately committing yourself to whatever you do. Wherever you are, give it all you got, and your impact will be much more than the sum of your investment.
Unfortunately, I never thought I had too much on my plate.
That's the problem. Okay, good. So where are we going with this, friends? Good morning, Al and Phyllis. Where are we going with this, friends, is that the secret of Hanukkah, as manifest in the metaphor of the story. Now, the story is a literal story. The Greeks it's a bizarre story, by the way. The Greeks broke into a temple and they searched out the bottle tops. They looked for the bottles and they broke the seals and they were happy. A strange story. And then the Jews, the Maccabees, they came in, and what are they looking for? They're looking for the bottle tops. And they found one bottle top and they declared victory. It's like they were fighting over bottle tops. You know, that's the story. Think about it. That's the story. The metaphor is that where we're about to go with this, is what the Greeks were trying to do was to assimilate the Jewish people as manifest in oil. What's oil? Oil is something that rises to the top. It represents our faith. What does faith do? Faith rises to the top. It's untouchable. Faith doesn't mix with the details. Doesn't get stuck in the details. Holocaust, no Holocaust. My belief is strong. Right? No matter whatever happens. How now, brown cow? My faith is strong. That's faith. It's by definition, it's unshakable. But the Greeks were going for the jugular. These guys were a brutal and ruthless and vicious and wise enemy. They were trying to get the Jews not from the bottom, but from the very, very, very top. They were going for the oil. They were trying to assimilate the Jews. They were trying to undermine our faith, and that's why they wanted to contaminate the oil. I want to give you an example of this in modern day terms. So we have a guy like Richard Dawkins. Is he Jewish, by the way? Richard Dawkins. Is he the guy that died? The big scientist, pseudoscientist, anti-God, anti-theist debater guy from England. I call him a pseudoscientist because
Not Stephen Hawking.
No, he's a real scientist. But a pseudoscientist is someone, in my opinion, is my personal opinion. If you're gonna, in the name of science, declare that something doesn't exist, that is unscientific in nature. So for a person to say that science disproves the belief in God, that is corrupt in it's a paradox. Science cannot prove something which doesn't exist. Science can prove something that does exist. Cannot prove something that doesn't exist, right? So that's why I call these guys pseudoscientists. But anyways, imagine you live in a world where people like Kanye West and big celebrities with huge following, they all come out and they undermine faith in God. And it becomes very, very, very uncool to believe in God. To the point that our kids are like afraid to wear a yarmulke. To the point that you're afraid to have a mezuzah on your door because it's like so embarrassing to be seen as such a simpleton, right? We're not far from that, from being there, right? But imagine that happened, right? Imagine if governments and the UN and World Cup soccer and it was everywhere. It was just everywhere. TikTok, that they were just talking about how much of an idiot you've got to be to believe in God. Then what would happen? We would cower in our faith. We'd hide it under the kitchen table, if anything. That's what the Greeks are doing. They were coming out with such strong philosophy. Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Epicurus. You know who Epicurus was? He was such an anti-theist that his name, he famously declared, I'm going to paraphrase, that there is no such thing as an afterlife, that there is no such thing as a God, that enjoy life, to have pleasure in every moment, that if you're not having pleasure right now, you're just an idiot. That was Epicurus, right? If you think that you're going to delay pleasure for something later in another world, you're just stupid beyond description, right? And Epicurus was like the Abraham Lincoln of his time. He was the George Washington of his days. His name became a Hebrew word. When you call someone an Epicurus, it means they're a heretic. It means heretic in Hebrew. That's how strong of an influence he was, right? Epicurus. Exactly, it's quoted in the Talmud. Look, he has a scholar, Talmudic scholar, right?
Yes.
So he's cross-referencing Talmud Sanhedrin. What page was it? 90 something, 90B, right? Good. Okay, very good. See, you know more than you think. So, folks, where I'm going with this is that we live in a culture where we're being ridiculed. No, sorry. Then the Greeks were very intelligent, cultured, sophisticated, advanced people. You weren't talking about people running around in loincloths. I mean, maybe they were, but that was the thing. You know, they were the most sophisticated people talking about the embarrassment of faith. So the Jews felt that their oil was being contaminated. And that's the metaphor manifested or represented by the Greeks breaking into the temple and unscrewing the bottle tops, breaking that little wax seal of the high priest. They said, oil ain't holy. You want to believe in rational, right? Like we believe in science. You know, like people believe today in politicians. It's okay to believe in politicians. All our politicians are infallible. Think about it. You know, for all the people that ridicule faith, right? You ask them about how can you believe in God? God is infallible. Well, I guess who's your candidate for president? Is he infallible? Have you ever criticized him? Would you ever criticize? God forbid. Chas v'shalom, we could ever say that Trump or Obama did something wrong. God forbid. They're God's gift to mankind. Mind the paradox, right? So when the Maccabees, who were the Maccabees? What does the word Maccabee mean? It's an acronym. An acronym we say every morning in Shachris in the morning service. It comes from Az Yashir right here. If you want to open the prayer book, I'll pass this around in a second. Here, it's on page 37 in the prayer book in the morning service in Az Yashir. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 lines from the top. Second word, Mi kamecha ba'elim Hashem, which means who is like you amongst the supernal beings, O Lord. If you want to see it here, 5 lines from the top. Just pass it around. 5 lines on the top, second word, Mi kamecha ba'elim Hashem, which means who is great like our God? No one is as mighty as Hashem. God is infinite. That's what Maccabee means. It means I believe in God unapologetically, fearlessly. That's what a Maccabee is, right? And what were they representing? These Maccabees, what they were doing is they said, we refuse to cower with our faith. And that's how they managed to find one jug of oil that was uncontaminated. What that means is the one jug of oil is representing. Oh, Richard Dawkins, Terry says, oh yeah, thank you. I think he might have done teshuva on his deathbed. I read something that maybe his father was Jewish, his mother was Jewish. At the end of his life, he was like, maybe there is a God. I don't know. Maybe I'm off over here, but if you could look it up, fact check me, that'll be nice. So the Maccabees, what they did is that they managed to dig so deep into their soul, into their own souls, under such fire, under such antagonism, and such a seductive civilization in which they lived, where it was so hard to be a frum Jew. Sounds a lot like our world today. That what they did is that they bored down to the very depths of their soul. They bored down so deep in the depths. In the depths of their soul, they bored down so deep that what happened was they hit that nuclear energy, which I was talking about before. They hit the nuclear energy, which once you touch that, you're able to change the world. What does that mean on a practical level? It means Mesiras Nefesh. Mesiras Nefesh, which means self-sacrifice. When you're willing to die for something, it means you believe in it that much. Normally it's like, how do you do? Have a nice day. Hello, see you later, That normally we're just full of inhibitions and formalities. But when you experience Mesiras Nefesh, which is self-sacrifice, that only comes from the very essence of your soul. And that is the expression that what's represented by the one cruse of oil that was untouched by the Greeks. That's the one thing that the Greeks were unable to touch. And the Rebbe says at the end of this discourse, an amazing thing. It's amazing. What the Rebbe says is that the reason that God makes this exile, if you have the book, I'm just going to tell you what page it's on. This is unbelievable piece here. Here, it's on page 62 if you happen to have the book. The purpose of the darkness of exile is to awaken the service of self-sacrifice. Which means the Greeks, our struggles, anti-Semites, Kanye West, Hamas, what the Rebbe is saying is that the reason that they were sent to us by God is in order to bring out that fearlessness, that untouchable essence within you, the essence of your soul. Give a quick illustration. If I asked you to push this book with 300 pounds of pressure, could you do that? Impossible. You can't. You can't put 300 pounds of pressure into a book that weighs 2 ounces. You can't. But if I give you a fridge that weighs half a ton, and I ask you to push it with 300 pounds of pressure, could you do it?
200.
300 pounds. You could do that. You could. I don't know if you'll move it, but you could muster 300 pounds of pressure. It's the opposition that brings out the best in you. Did you watch the World Cup final the other day? I didn't see it, but I just saw the highlights. It's amazing. The Argentina was up 2-0, right? Suddenly, out of nowhere, within 2 minutes, France was facing global humiliation in front of how many billions of eyeballs, right? They're the defending champions. Suddenly, out of nowhere, they brought out this unbelievable talent to bring out 2 more goals, right? And then another goal here, and another goal there. It was crazy. It was like when one team is verschlafen, asleep, the other team is also verschlafen. But when the one team is on fire, the other team brings out their fire as well. So what the Rebbe is saying in this discourse is an unbelievable chiddush. The novelty is incredible. Those that are hurting us, don't shoot the messenger. They were sent by God to bring out your essence. God is giving you a hard time on purpose because the Jewish people are sleeping in America. They're in a coma. Think about it, in a spiritual coma. What happens when you get an anti-Semite come out there? So you are Jewish. I didn't know. I've been trying to get your attention for 30 years, right? Right? Suddenly now we're showing up in shul, we're putting up mezuzahs, we come into the Chanukah lighting, right? Suddenly it comes out. That's the purpose. Okay, let's read this inside a little bit, right? Christopher Hitchens, I think that was the guy. Yes. Thank you, Al. That was the guy I was looking for. Christopher Hitchens, who was a very, very eloquent anti-theist. A very smart, intelligent. I think of him like a Greek, like the Greeks of Hanukkah. He was super smart. And he was not just smart, but very eloquent. He was the one, says Al, the atheist who altered his view on his deathbed. Amazing. What an amazing story. And just interesting, when the Rebbe was asked by someone about whether they should have a public debate on religion with an anti-theist or an atheist, the Rebbe's response was absolutely not. Don't do a public debate. Why? Because the victor is much less the proponent of truth and much more the master of eloquence. It's not what you say, it's how you say it that matters. And these British guys, the Christopher Hitchens, Richard Dawkins, I mean, these guys are classic whips. These guys are trained with the art of sarcasm and dry wit like nobody else. Who was one of the in the Parliament of England? Somebody once said to another, "Do you have to fall asleep every time I speak in the House of Commons, in the House of Lords?" So the guy responds, "Oh no, it's purely voluntary." Another one said,
Churchill was the best
I think Churchill, no,
Churchill.
was it Churchill who said, somebody said to him that if I was married to you, I would poison your tea.
Yeah.
So he responded, if you were my wife, I would drink it.
Yeah, he's a whole collector. The best.
Churchill, awesome, right? Okay, so let's learn this inside, guys. We're understanding a little bit more where we're going with this. Let's get into it now, okay? So, page 30, if you have the book. The essence of the explanation is that the function, to answer all these questions, is that the function of the Chanukah lights is to illuminate the darkness. We know this message, right? But now what we're going to talk about to illuminate which darkness, a darkness like no other, like a very, very thick darkness, right? First, we're going to have to understand what that darkness is, what the Greeks were trying to do. To explain, the miracle of Hanukkah took place after the Greeks entered the sanctuary and defiled all the oils that were in the sanctuary. In other words, the overwhelming darkness of the Greeks was to such a degree that not only did they enter the sanctuary and defile it, they also defiled the oils in the sanctuary. What does that mean? They defiled the oils. I spoke about this. We're reading it inside. Oil corresponds to the level of holy, as it says, oil of holy anointment. So oil is a very elevated level of holy. Holy, Kodesh, is a word unto itself, similar to oil which floats on top of all liquids and does not mix with them. It follows that the defilement of the sanctuary's oils by the Greeks is in this aspect more grievous than the defilement of the sanctuary in general. Even though the holiness of the sanctuary ranks highly in the 10 levels of holiness, their impacting the oil exhibits a very sophisticated and elevated concept that the Greeks had of what they were trying to achieve. These were a very cold and calculated enemy. This is evidenced by the fact that even after your children came and purified your temple, the Maccabees, they needed a miracle in order to light the menorah. That's how deep the contamination had succeeded. Beginning with the miracle of, quote, they found one pure jug sealed with the seal of the high priest. And the miracle was an expression of the infinite light which transcends hishtalshalus. The fact that they needed a miracle, that they found the oil and that the oil burned for 8 days, is a manifestation of a infinite energy, an energy that obviously overrides the laws of nature. Finding the oil and allowing the oil to burn, which means that what they had done within their own souls was bored down into a level of infinity, what I call nuclear energy in the metaphor. And that manifests in God is our shadow, that just like we called infinity, summoned infinity within our own souls, the essence of our soul. Remember, our soul is a piece of God, right? So when you hit the essence of your soul, you're touching infinity. That brings out infinity from God as well, which manifests in a miracle, right? In the presence of such light, even the darkness does not darken. To the contrary, this light illuminates the darkness so that even the darkness shines. This is very powerful when you think about it in the context of what I just explained. That even the darkness shines, and Havaya with the added "and" will illuminate my darkness. What this means is that we're going to understand later that the purpose of the exile, the purpose of the anti-Semite, the Kanye West was what? In order to challenge you to bring out the best in you, to bring out the infinity within your own soul. Once you bring that infinity within your own soul, what's going to happen is that even the anti-Semite is going to turn into a philo-Semite. That's what it means. And that, my friends, is what Mashiach is all about. Mashiach is when the world will come to our aid. What that means is that we will transform the darkness, that the darkness will shine like day. And that's a verse which comes straight from Psalms, by the way. Laila kayim yair, Psalms 145, I think it is, 144. That Laila kayim yair, the night will shine like day. That's what we're trying to achieve when we transform, when we reveal the purpose of the night. that the night's purpose was in order to bring out the best in us. The purpose of the suffering was to bring out the best in us. When we finally bring out the best in us, like the half-a-ton fridge that I spoke about in my metaphor, now you've brought out the best in you. Now even the fridge, even the opposition, even the enemy, even the anti-Semites will turn into your friend and supporter. This is why the mitzvah of the Chanukah lamp is performed specifically from when the sun sets. This is answering our fourth question. Remember, we had 4 questions, right? We're starting to answer them. Why is it when the sun sets, and it's based on the menorah in the temple, which was in the daytime, since the function of the Chanukah lamp is to illuminate the darkness? What we're doing on Chanukah is more than what was going on in the temple. In the temple, the power of holiness was such that it could illuminate the daytime. Very nice. Illuminating this world, it's very nice. But to be able to illuminate the darkness, for that you need a Chanukah miracle. For that you need opposition that's going to bring out the best in you. They didn't have that in the temple. In the temple, there was peace. Shlomo, the days of Shlomo. Shlomo, King Solomon means peace, shalom. His days, the days of peace. The opposition was sent to us to allow us to have a deeper impact. This is also why the lamps of the Chanukah are precisely 8, as well as the fact that the days of Chanukah are 8. And this is, I think, our first question, right? Because one of them. Because the number 8 signifies, as noted above, the level that is beyond the level that is beyond nature. We spoke yesterday. Number 7 is the cycle of nature. Number 8 is supernatural, which is why the number 8 is a manifestation of infinity, right? The number 8 on its side. And it's due to this very level, the one is able to illuminate even the darkness. So that's the kernel of our discussion. I'm going to go just a little bit more to start applying this in detail. So we spoke yesterday about the questions. Today we spoke about the core of the answer. And now we're going to go into the details. So let's talk right now about the Greeks. What were the Greeks trying to do? Let's talk about the darkness. We'll understand the darkness so that we can understand what the darkness was there to bring out. Okay? And we're really going to be using the Ala Nissim prayer here, which we mentioned. It's a little paragraph we mentioned in the Amidah, what we add in the Festival of Hanukkah 3 times a day in our prayers. Let's go through this. The explanation of the matter as it pertains to the service of man on a practical level can be understood by introducing the ideas explained in the discourses of my father-in-law, the previous Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Shnerson. Here's how he explains that the Greeks defiled the sanctuary oils because their entire war was a spiritual one. Every other enemy of the Jewish people was trying to kill our bodies. Think Nazis, Crusaders, Spanish Inquisition, Babylonians, the Romans, Assyrians, everybody else is trying to kill us. But the Greeks were not trying to kill us. That's the reason that we don't celebrate the war. We don't celebrate the victory of the war. On Purim, we celebrate that we won the war because they were trying to kill us. On Hanukkah, we do not celebrate that we won the war because the war was not against our bodies. The word Chanukah means that we rested on the 25th day of the month of Kislev, that the war was over by the time the festival started. We're celebrating the light, not the might. The Greeks defiled the sanctuary oils because their entire war was a spiritual one. They did not wish to harm the bodies of Israel. Their primary desire was to cause them, Israel, to forget your Torah and take them away from the statutes of your will. Now, this is very key right now. In the days of Mattathiah, the son of Yochanan the high priest, there has been in his sons when the wicked Hellenic government rose up against your people Israel to make them forget your Torah. They didn't have a problem with Jews learning Torah. The problem was your Torah. You want to learn a book of wisdom in the self-help section of the library? No problem. But you want to learn a book in the religious section? No. We don't do religious section. We don't do faith. Your Torah, the key word here is your. That's what they were unhappy with. When they rose up against your people, Israel, to make them forget your Torah and to violate the decrees of your will. What does it mean, the decrees of your will? You know, there's 3 kinds of mitzvahs, right? There are mitzvahs that we do out of logic. Rational mitzvahs, honoring your parents, don't murder, don't rape. I mean, this is logical mitzvahs. You don't need God to tell you this. Those are called mishpatim. Then there are mitzvahs that don't make sense, but they're just sentimental. No, those are eidos. They're sentimental. Why do you eat matzah? Does it make sense to eat matzah? Because it reminds us of a good story, right? Why do we wear tzitzis? Tzitzis reminds us of the 613 commandments. So it's like a sentimental reminder, right? Those are eidos. And then there's the chok, the decree, which makes no sense. If you touch a dead body, you become impure. what? A woman who's menstruating is impure to her husband. What? Like, that doesn't make any sense. So when it comes to what we read over here, we say they wanted us to forget your Torah and to violate the decrees of your will. They didn't have a problem with the mitzvahs that were rational. Fantastic. You want to keep kosher because it's a good diet? Love it. Love it. Keep it up. You want to do stuff that expresses your tradition and your heritage. You want to eat the matzah because it reminds you of the story of your ancestors. It's lovely. You guys are very cultured. We love it. But when it comes to the chok, to the decree mitzvahs, a mitzvah like the red heifer, you take a red heifer if it's never had a yoke on it, and it was a certain kind of red heifer, a certain color, and whatever, and you burn it, and you sprinkle its ashes on somebody, you touch the dead person, then the guy becomes pure. They were like, no, that's Baba Mises. They don't want to hear about this stuff, right? So the choks, that was their problem, because their problem was your Torah was God. That was the problem, right? So even within the battle against Torah and mitzvahs, their primary goal of battle was against the spirituality and divinity of Torah and mitzvahs. Hence, to cause them to forget your Torah specifically. Even the Greeks would not have been bothered if the Jews would study Torah, but they wanted to study Torah. They wanted Torah to be studied only for its intellectuality, for it is your wisdom and understanding in the eyes of the nations. Quote. In other words, Torah makes Jews look smart. Nice. We like that part. That's good. You guys are cultured, the people of the book. Their primary battle was that they sought to make them forget your Torah, God's Torah, to make Israel forget, God forbid, that the Torah is the Torah of God. And what do we say every single morning before we come to show? When we wake up in the morning, we say a blessing on the Torah. Baruch atah Adisham Elokeinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu v'tzivanu al divrei Torah. And we say, Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who has chosen us from all the nations and given us His Torah. Blessed are you, Lord, who gives us the Torah. We say that every time we get an aliyah. Before you read the Torah, we have to remember who the author is. Right? It's vital. They said, don't remember the author. We don't want you to remember the author. Similarly, with regard to mitzvahs, this is just everything which I just said written. Similarly, with regard to mitzvahs, the war, so against Torah, what was their problem? The author of Torah, they didn't believe in the author of Torah. Similarly, with regards to the mitzvahs, the war of the Greeks was against the divinity of the mitzvahs, against the mitzvahs that are the divine will. We only do them because that's the will of God, right? Hence, to take them away from the statutes of your will, the chokim, statutes, and specifically of your will, which contains two interpretations. So one interpretation is the one that I just said, that they only were opposed to the mitzvahs that were divinely mandated, right? Even the Greeks agree, this is the first interpretation, even the Greeks agreed to the testimonial mitzvahs and the rational judicial mitzvahs, since they're rational. Their entire battle was against the statute type mitzvahs, the chokim, since they are fulfilled only because they are the divine will. That's what I just explained. But there's another interpretation which the Rabbi explains over here. Just in brief, we'll wrap it up with this. And the Rebbe's interpretation is like this. Why do you not murder? Why do you honor your parents? Maybe parents is a better example. Do you honor your parents because it makes sense? Or do you honor your parents because that's what God wants you to do? Why do you do it? Oh, does anybody disagree with what Jan just said? He says he honors his parents because he loves them. Does anybody disagree with that?
Yes.
What do you say?
It doesn't matter. God says you have to honor him. He doesn't say you have to.
There's a huge debate between the two of you right now. Huge debate. Jan is saying that you honor your parents because you love them, and that's perfectly fine. Rob is saying he honors his parents even if he doesn't love them. What's the nafkamina, to use Talmudic language? What's the nafkamina between these two opinions? What happens if your parents are evil? What happens if there's nothing to love? Right? Imagine your parents became Republicans. Right? Imagine your parents, I think it's a practical example today, but imagine if your parents became senile, God forbid. Imagine if your parents were abusive. Oh, so according to the first opinion, you'd have a hard time honoring them. The second opinion says, I love them anyways. There's a great story.
Doesn't say you love him.
Oh, correct. Doesn't say you love them.
You have to honor them.
It says you honor them and respect them. Correct. Agreed. I stand corrected. So there's a beautiful story in the Talmud of one of the sages. What? I stand. There was a sage, I forget his name. Was it Rabbi Lezer in Yeshua, maybe? Whose mother was Sina what? No, different story. He was Rabbi Elazar ben Yeshua. He was giving a lecture in front of the Senate, the Roman Senate, the Greek Senate. I'm not sure who he was talking to. And his mother, who was senile, came over in front of his honorable lecture to the Senate. She took off her shirt and started beating him over the head. She was senile. So what does he do? What would you do if you're in the middle of a lecture on national television and your mom starts beating you over the head? Like, Mom, not now. Get out of here. Right? He just waits there patiently for her to finish beating him up. And when her shoe drops on the floor, he bends over to save her the trouble, gives it to her, and lets her finish. Wow. Right? So this is the second interpretation. The second interpretation is, and this is what the Maimer is pointing out to us, is that even the rational mitzvahs, the reason that we do them is not because it's rational. We do them because it's a chok, because that's what God told us to do. We look at the understanding of the mitzvah as like God was nice to us, and He wanted us to sort of have a piece of the action a little bit, to appreciate what we're doing. But that is not the be-all and end-all of the mitzvah. Another very practical example of this is kosher. How many people do you know they keep kosher because it's healthy? But the minute they find out that meat and milk together is actually very good for you, they'll switch. Right? How many people know they try trichinosis and the bottom feeders, and they get into this whole philosophy thing? They're like, yeah, bacon is it's very bad for you, right? They'll tell you the whole story about why it's bad for you, right? And then you come and tell them, actually, I can't imagine why people eat lobster. I've said this to you before. I don't understand how people can eat lobster. It's a giant cockroach. I don't understand this. Huge. So they say to me, Rabbi, you're right. You're right. I won't eat a cockroach. But then you tell them, you got a fish. This fish, the swordfish, it doesn't have fins, doesn't have scales. It's not kosher. Like, what are you talking about, Rabbi? What's wrong with the swordfish? It looks like the other fish. It's okay. It's the nice nose. It's okay. You know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with it. I can't explain to them. You can't explain to them why it's bad. Right? Now you're running into a problem. If the whole foundation of their Judaism was rational, you're going to have a hard time explaining to them why they shouldn't eat a swordfish. Right? Or a cute little seahorse. It's so cute. Right? Why can't I eat it? Right? I don't know. Maybe you should. I don't know. But they look so tame, and so you can't explain that. That's where the Rebbe says we do the mitzvahs not because they make sense. We do them because that's what God commanded, even the rational ones and even the testimonial ones. And that's why, by the way, it says in Para Aduma, in the midst of the red heifer, it says, Vaydaber Hashem al Moshe Leimer, Hashem spoke to Moshe saying, Zois chukas haTorah. This is the chukah of the whole Torah, even though it goes into the mitzvah of the red heifer. And Rashi explains, he says that actually, this is the chok of the entire Torah. Just like you do this mitzvah without any rational explanation, so to every single mitzvah in the Torah also, we do without any rational explanation. Friends, this is a game changer. It's a game changer, paradigm shift on how we view our lives, Hashem, our relationship with Hashem, our religion, our faith, our identity. Because how many of us would say, well, you're not supposed to drive to shul? Okay. But what happens if... it's a bit of a touchy subject, a little too personal, but let's change topic. Change topic.
Go for it.
No.
Go for it.
No, I have people that tell me, they'll say, look, I drive to shul, but I only listen to Jewish music on the way. I won't turn on the radio. Yeah, you got to hand it to them. Listen, everyone's trying. We're all trying. But if you go to a mitzvah, which is like,
Don't drive a German car.
see, that might be a good example. A German car. That might be a good example.
Everybody walks to shul somewhere.
That's right. Everybody walks to shul. That's right.
Nobody drives it.
Nobody drives. That's why Rabbi said.
No, like I'm thinking like this, like let's talk about a kosher restaurant, right? It's a kosher restaurant. So you got to keep kosher. Makes sense. Got to keep kosher. Makes sense, right? What happens if I have to have a business deal? I'm gonna make a lot of money. That's gonna go to charity, and the guy needs to meet me for lunch, and I have to eat it in a non-kosher restaurant. I'm sure God will forgive me for this, right? If your Judaism is rational based, you will more than likely find a way to justify that. But if your Judaism is faith-based, in the context of Chanukah, oil-based, right? Then you won't. You're unshakable. If the president of the United States calls me up, right? If I get a message on a Shabbos morning, Joe Biden is on the phone, Rabbi. He wants to talk to you. What? No, somebody answer the phone. And they said, Joe Biden wants to talk to you on the phone right now. Right? There'd be a huge debate and show. Rabbi, do it. Come on, Rabbi, he's calling you. How often the President of the United States call you? Right? I'm sure half the show would say, Rabbi, you got to do it. If you're not, I'm walking out of here. Right? So, and then, look, I can tell you that my approach would be, I'm not going to do it. Now, if the message came to me that there's a life in danger, and by the way, more than likely, what?
He thought he was calling the sister, Robin.
Oh, right. But more than likely, there's going to be some sort of life in danger. And in that case, I would answer the phone. If there was like some sort of existential crisis, needs to know, do we attack Iran? I need a rabbinical input right now. There's a missile on the way. You better take that call. I'm going to tell him whatever I think I need to say to him, right? But if it's just like, oh, listen, I'm in town. I need a place to eat for Shabbos dinner tonight. You know what I mean? I can't take the call, right? But a rational-based Judaism would say, go for it. It's such a good deal. Look what a mitzvah you do, right? An irrational-based Judaism, a faith-based Judaism would say no way, right? And that's the second answer. A second deeper explanation is that their desire to take them away from the statutes of your will, quoted here in the prayer, included not only the chok mitzvahs, but all mitzvahs, even the testimonial and judicial mitzvahs, as shall be explained in the following chapter. That's a lot to digest, folks. But we're getting down into the beauty and the essence of Chanukah. Thank you all. Yishar koach.
Pages in here aren't the same as on Kindle.
Oh, really? That's
I
funny.
ordered the chopped liver.